So we were just commencing prior to hitting record about the Office and about episodes of The Office, and I was sharing with someone recently, Ronnie, that during one of the early things that my family and I did during lockdown was I made my kids take a Myers-Briggs test,
Oh,
and
wow.
then one of the exercises after getting their Myers-Briggs, I then begin to show them how their personality aligns with personalities from various movies or character sets, etc. And The Office was a really fun one, just in terms of the way that my family and we all lined out. So my personality matches Jim Halpert. My wife's personality lines up with Jan, which she doesn't like for me to share, but that's because she's very much like Jan. And
Hopefully she's not listening today. So, all right.
no, she's not. No. And then my kids, my son lines up as Dwight, and my daughter lines up as Michael. And it was just so interesting, like especially the relationship between Dwight and Michael, and then seeing that best of friends, worst of enemies relationship line up with my kids. It's quite fascinating. Quite
That's
fascinating.
got to be a dynamic household you've got going on there.
We all are in the E category. There are no introverts in the McCord household, that's for sure. So
I'm actually fast forwarding to the therapy session where the kids are talking about the time their dad made them take the Myers-Briggs and then compared them to the Office characters.
yeah, when they were in 4th and 6th grade. That's
100%.
He told me
That's
I
going
was
to be a
white.
good story.
we'll file that away. Welcome to Group Thinkers, where we force people to take Myers-Briggs in real time. No, this is the podcast from RKD Group, and on each and every episode, we welcome someone from the nonprofit space to shed some light on the way that they think about things, and we kind of learn through things together. And very excited today to welcome Kelley Hecht. Kelley, good to see you.
You as well. Long overdue, my friend.
Long overdue. If you had to guess which Office character you would kind of line up with, where would that be?
That's a hard one. I think I bring an essence of each on a given day or a given chapter in my life, which maybe brings other adjectives to mind for me, but I'm not sure that I align directly with one.
Yeah.
Is that a like cop out answer?
Yeah, but it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. I think that that's accurate. That obviously, depending on the environment that you're in, your personality can take on different traits, right? You can minimize things or maximize different aspects of it. I don't know. I think by the end of the episode, Ronnie's going to know.
There we go. You guys can tell me at the end of this conversation where you're putting me, but I would like it to be at this chapter of my career. I don't want it to be like who I am, period, full stop. Okay, give me a little flex.
Just for right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Kelley is the team lead for the industry advisors on the nonprofit side at Amazon Web Services, and you know, Kelley, to your comment earlier, just kind of the hey, it's about time. Like it's good to get to do this. It's because we've been in circles kind of across the room from each other forever. And known of each other forever, and so it's great to be able to have a conversation with you and learn about your path and learn from the people who have shaped you along the way. So that's our point today. That's our purpose. And so just kind of want to dive right in and ask you, what one word would you use to describe leadership?
Leadership in general, or my leadership?
Leadership in general. good leadership, in fact, not necessarily poor leadership?
I think good leadership is flexible, and is present for the various moments that it has the opportunity to help shape and guide. Yeah, those are the two words that come to me when I think of leadership, because it's a complicated thing to be a leader, and it's a more complicated thing to be led. And so I think both of those terms feel really essential to doing it well.
I love those words, flexible and present. When you and I were chatting a couple weeks ago, you talked about your experience of working remote well before the world went remote, and so share a little bit of that path, and then what that how that experience has maybe reinforced flexibility and being present in your role now.
Yeah, it was an unexpected path. So I started my nonprofit career at the American Cancer Society in Manhattan, at the regional level, and I was in the office for a year. And as that role evolved and as other roles followed, I was never interested or able to geographically relocate in order to accommodate the role that I was taking. And keep in mind, this was like the early 2000s, late 90s. So this was long before we had any of the tools and resources and sort of culture that we do today around engaging digitally and remotely. But I was fortunate enough to have leaders that were flexible, and that allowed me at numerous jobs and numerous organizations to work remotely. It taught me, I think it taught me a lot, much of which I find to be even more helpful today. I would say the first thing that it really showed me was that boundaries are super important and are yours to create. And I'm not sure that I today think that's specific to remote working, but I think it's exaggerated with remote working. And I think in the world that we are in right this minute, where we all went remote and now some are back and some aren't, and it's sort of a little bit more diverse and complicated. Boundaries are a really healthy thing to have and define and to share with people what your boundaries are so that they know. And with boundaries comes ownership and responsibility. And so I would say the thing I learned early on in working remotely was that there was really no room or role for being a victim. If I couldn't hear something, if I didn't know something, if I wasn't invited to something, I was remote. That was my choice to live where I lived. And so I pretty quickly let go of any sense of it being someone else's responsibility to include me. And over the course of time, I learned to find ways to proactively engage, connect, make sure that I was set up for an experience in the way that I wanted, which sometimes meant getting on a plane and going where I needed to be. And in other cases, it meant working with someone in advance of the meeting. So I learned that pretty profoundly, quickly, early on. And I think today it still holds really true, and now is something that others are joining me in learning as well. But it's true whether you're in the office or not in the office, right? It's just helpful to sort of have your boundaries and to own them for yourself.
Kelley, do you feel like the attitude, I guess, around remote work has changed from, you got to experience it before the pandemic, and having talked to other people who worked remotely, they did feel kind of isolated and not part of the gang, kind of thing. Do you feel like there have been efforts? Has it changed the way people treat remote employees and the way people try to be more inclusive of them?
I think probably yes. The first thing that I think changed was an openness by leaders to recognize that people can be incredibly productive and valuable and skilled from a remote environment.
Yeah.
And while there is so much trauma in COVID and in the last few years, there are some silver linings. And one of them is, I think leaders are open to finally picking the right person for the right job, as opposed to the right person for the right job who lives where I need them to live. And so I think that's the first really important change that took place. Within that, I also think there was an awakening to, this sort of, it used to be put out as a joke, but there's an ounce of truth in every joke, right? That people were sitting at home in their pajamas and, watching TV and not working. Like, that was never the reality of a remote employee for me in the 90s. And by the way, if that's how you work that way in the office probably too. So I'm not so sure remote's the variable there. So I think both of those things were healthy for the culture of business and the culture of our professional environment. As it relates to the inclusivity of it, I don't know about that one, to be really honest. I mean, I certainly think people now appreciate what it's like to be remote. I think there's an awareness to it now that there hadn't been. I am a little bit of people have sort of joked that it's funny that I'm the one that says this. I'm not sure that the 100% remote environment is sustainable or healthy. I really do think being in physical presence with one another is important. It's important for certain types of thinking and collaboration. It's important for building trust and rapport and respect for one another. I think there's a real mental health piece of it as well, that, I can hide a lot by just living in this box that I can't hide as well when I'm coming to the office on a regular basis. Am I sad? Am I stressed? Am I happy? Am I excited? So I hope that we won't swing a pendulum too far in the other direction, right? I hope we'll find some of that balance, because it's shown us that we were too stringent over here, right? There needs to be some flexibility. And I do think there's value in being together. So here's to a new challenge for leadership to find what that looks like for your organization and for your staffing blend.
Yeah, I agree with so much that you said there. And I think that I believe that the key in a lot of it is empowerment. And so, being an effective remote employee comes from, yes, establishing boundaries, but also empowering someone to establish those boundaries and setting the right expectation. And then likewise, there's something about the value, like you said, of being in a physical space together. Members of our team met yesterday in one of our office locations to work on a project together. But there's something that makes that special that you want to continue to foster, but still empower them to be productive and effective as a part of that. So I think that's true. And I'm so curious to see how we're going to, how over time we will rightly correct back to what that looks like. So from American
one more thing, Justin, before I forget, because this wasn't my idea, and I feel badly that I can't remember who the smart person was who said it to me, but there was another takeaway that I found really interesting. So being remote, I didn't experience this, but they pointed out that for most professionals, they grew up in a physical office environment. And they talked about how much learning young leaders get from observing the way people engage in an office environment. And they were sharing this real concern about what does that look like in a remote environment. And I thought that's so interesting, because that's a blind spot for me, having always been remote. I learned a little bit that way, but for a very short period of time, right? But the majority of leaders who are leading today learned from a lot of, for lack of a better word, osmosis of living in an office.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that in, because while that isn't my experience, it does strike me as a really astute observation for one of the reasons to find some blend of in and out.
And it really challenges leaders to be even that much more intentional with new, employees, whether or not that's someone at an entry level or even at a senior level, just being that much more.
Great point.
So after 9 years on the client side, you then left and went to the agency space. So I don't know which is the, the dark side and the light side. Sometimes we'll talk about joining the agency side as the dark side. Sometimes talk about, going to the client side as the dark side. But I'm so curious about that, not just that decision in that chapter. I'm curious about what you found that was unexpected about moving into the agency side, and then what you actually found was kind of what you were expecting. When you think about the lessons and your time from ACS to Pursuant.
Yeah. I mean, I think in short, I was so naive in that particular moment, despite the fact that anyone who knew me then would tell you that I thought I knew quite a lot. I was pretty sure at that sad juncture of my career that I was the smartest person in the room, as humbling as it is to admit that. And I was not, to be very blunt. I was very fortunate in that I had worked with a leader who was a vendor partner to me when I was at American Cancer Society, who really saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And he invested in me and sort of invited me onto the agency side. And I remember feeling incredibly honored and excited and nervous and scared, to make that jump. But I don't know that in the moment I knew exactly what all those feelings were rooted in. I did know that it was something that I was dedicated to doing well and committed to, and I'm forever grateful to him for that opportunity. I think the thing that was really interesting when I look back, I wouldn't call either the dark or the light side. They both have sun and they both have clouds. The being on the agency side offered a breadth of exposure that is just profoundly interesting. To be able to work across that many missions, to work with incredibly diverse leaders, in both their backgrounds and their styles and their visions and their natural gifts versus learned gifts. I mean, I was there for 11 years and we worked with churches and we worked with hospitals and everything in between. And so really getting a sense of where there was commonality in all of that diversity and where there was really distinction, I think was one of the unexpected but truly extraordinary gifts that those 11 years gave me. And I learned so much from each of those interactions. And yet, I will say, I don't think any of my agency time would have been as valuable had I not already spent 10 years on the client or organization side. And my journey from dark to light or light to dark, depending on how you talk about it, started there because I started at a chapter of American Cancer Society and then went to national. And if anyone on the podcast today is from an affiliate organization, they know that there's a lot of tension between chapters and national home offices. So having spent 10 years there was sort of a necessary, for me at least, prerequisite to being able to value and embrace all that then the 11 years on the agency side exposed me to.
You mentioned a mentor or a leader who saw something in you that brought you into that space. As you think about your career, both on the dark and light side, and we won't specify which, who's kind of stood out to you as, someone who has just been like a mentor or somebody that's really taught you things and kind of just elevated your career in a way?
So many, should go without saying. I mean, I like to believe that I am present enough in my interactions to be different for each one of them, right? Each person, each conversation sort of has a little thumbprint on the way that I show up the next day. For me, it really started with my first leader. Her name is Karen Barkowski, now Karen Kennedy. She took an incredible risk on me. I was, a couple of years out of college. I had been working in the for-profit sector with a startup, and I quit my job and took a year traveling in Europe. And when I came back, I knew very specifically that I wanted to work at the American Cancer Society. And I went through an interview process for a role that I ended up pulling my name out of because it wasn't the right role for me. But during the interview process, Karen had been one of the people that I had interviewed with, and I called her after and said, if you ever had a job, I would love to work for you. And she said, the only job I have, you're overqualified for. It is a temporary employee for the summer to make cold calls to strangers to sign people up to walk in the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer walk. It pays minimum wage, and I can only guarantee you a job for 7 weeks. And I said, I'll take it. And it was one of the most humbling roles I've ever had. But she didn't close the door on me because I was quote unquote overqualified, and she didn't close the door on me for anything else. She just created a path and allowed me to make it my own. So I'm forever grateful to her. I'm still in touch with her, and I've now worked for her a couple times. And then from that role, I got exposed to two more leaders that were in a different role in American Cancer Society, Lisa and Chris. And the two of them also saw something in me and invested. So I think you're seeing the theme, right? Like leaders who looked beyond the surface and started to invest with me. What's interesting is that I look at those experiences as the beginning and the sort of foundation of my professional development. When I think more broadly about my entire journey, it's actually really more my customer interactions, interactions with people I've hired over the years. I find that I learned a lot from these guys early on as mentors and leaders, and now I learn so much from I worked deeply with JDRF for years and worked with extraordinary leaders in that org. Cleveland Clinic, a woman named Laura, just like forever changed the way I think about leadership. And, an ops guy that I worked with at Pursuant, Gary, totally different mindsets than me and really significant influence in how I wanted to show up in my leadership as a professional in the world. So lots and lots and lots of extraordinary people I've been exposed to.
Ronnie, I can't help but think about one of our recent conversations with Meg Listove, one of the co-writers of Inside Out, and we were talking, Kelley, about storytelling and the power of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And she said this thing, she made this reference to the Wizard of Oz, that within a great story that you have to have a path, that the Wizard of Oz isn't the Wizard of Oz without the yellow brick road.
Yeah, totally.
And what I love about what you're saying, and maybe I've just got the Wizard of Oz stuck in my brain, is that there's the Glinda as the mentor, maybe, that plays a part in the beginning of Dorothy's journey, but it's actually the people that she's with as she's walking that have just as big of an influence. And so I really appreciate you framing it that way, in terms of the people who have had an influence that are those around you as you walk through and have walked through this journey.
Yeah, and being aware of and open to leadership not being hierarchical, but being a way that you show up in a room or in a conversation or in a challenge. And I think that was never explicitly said to me, but was always modeled for me by leaders that I respected. And so I think keeping your eyes and ears open for leadership to be all around you really has helped me in shaping not just who I've become as a leader, but candidly shape my career path. And whenever I hit moments where I was thinking about the next step in my career, either inside an organization or moving between organizations, I always tapped into that full community of leaders that were at varying levels of their career, varying levels within their organizations, and I have always found the richness of that to be something that that I'm better for.
So let's talk about how that has shaped you in your new role.
Yeah.
And so after a decade plus at Pursuant, where you were a very influential and instrumental leader, both to colleagues that we have now from some of our shared contacts, and to nonprofit organizations, you shifted and moved to a little startup in the last year.
Company.
Yeah, a small little tech company. And so I'm curious about, like, you've shared so many different aspects that could play a role now, but in your role now, what do you think, what do you draw from your experiences that help you lead in your role now at AWS?
Again, cliche, all of them.
Right.
Certainly some stand out more than others. It was surprising to many, myself included, that I went to work for the tech company that I went to work for, because I'm not known for being particularly technical. In fact, I'm often made fun of for printing things in large quantities. And also because I've really always worked for smaller teams and companies. I mean, even though American Cancer Society was huge, I was always sort of within a niche within a larger company. So this was a big stretch on both of those sides for me. And I came into it with an open mind and an open heart and sort of ready to embrace whatever it ended up being, right? Which almost a year in, today is actually the year anniversary of my interview.
All right.
Almost a year in, I'm could not be more grateful for where I am and what it is. But to answer your actual question, when I started at AWS for nonprofits, they have at Amazon something called leadership principles, publicly available, worth Googling, worth reading. One of their core leadership principles is learn and be curious. And I would say that that is something that I learned a little bit later in my career. I would say I was probably halfway through my journey at Pursuant when I really fully embraced how incredibly powerful a leadership tool it is to enter into your work with a learn and be curious mindset. And I would say it is probably the one I have had to lean on most fully in the last year, as I have been learning like from 20 fire hoses at once, not just one. But I think that that is also how we bring out the best in each other as leaders, is to learn and be curious. To me, leaves room for everyone to share their strengths and to shine and to bring something to the conversation, which inevitably makes it richer. And so I try to really ground myself in my leadership in that, in my customer experiences with that, in the way that I approach the world, because I find that it's what keeps the openness to make room for everyone. And when everyone is participating and present, that's where the really good work comes. So I would say that learn and be curious piece, which again, I learned later, is probably what I pull on the most frequently in my current role.
For those who are looking to learn and be curious, Kelley, AWS has the Imagine event coming up.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, kind of just, what you're going for at the event and what sort of things people can expect?
Yeah, the Imagine event is amazing. And if you can be in DC on March 14th, 2023, do it. It's free and it's got some great speakers and content this year. There's also a lot of content that will follow if you're not able to be there. To paraphrase it for how I experience it, so, reminder that I'm not technical. I don't come from an IT background. I did not know what the cloud or a data lake or a Kubernetes was before I started at AWS for nonprofits. But technology is the world we live in. It's no longer a channel. It's no longer just a vehicle. It's all around us. And so really the vision of Imagine is to help more nonprofit leaders and all nonprofit leaders from all departments understand technology in a way that allows them to deliver on their mission more fully. So when you think about, IT, that's pretty linear, right? Like, where are you storing your information? How are you securing your information? How are you preventing latency when people need to access something? That tends to be a little bit more prescriptive. But when you get into the world of marketing and fundraising and biz ops, it's not always quite as clear. We are used to using SaaS tools and we're used to using platforms, but the technology behind that is not always something that's clear and obvious to us. So this is really an opportunity to speak in common language about the role of technology, to provide some new opportunities to open your mind to the way that you're doing your business, and explore what might make sense for you, because we've all got some pretty ambitious goals that stand before us. And it requires us to continually adapt and learn and grow. And so this is a fun group to do that with.
Kelley, it's going to be a really cool event, and so I know we've got teammates that are looking forward to it and can't wait to see what comes of it. And we're so thankful for your time today, and for you to set aside time to chat with us, to share some of the lessons that you've learned. It's fun whenever you can take a step back and think about, like I mentioned earlier, the people across the room, the people that you either compete against or, that you are aware of, and when you can sharpen each other, and you've certainly done that for us today. And so we're super appreciative.
Well, this was really fun for me. I not only have I sat across the room from you guys, but I've been almost stalking you on social media and LinkedIn for years. I really appreciate the thinking you bring into this space, and I would say, as a sense of gratitude for you both, one of the most important ways to learn and be curious in the world is to continually expose yourself to things that are outside of your day-to-day work. And you both, through this vehicle, do an incredible job of that. So thank you for giving us something that's not only helpful and informative to listen to, but quite frankly, fun.
Thank you. That is incredibly kind. Incredibly kind. Ron, you have to follow that by delivering on what we talked about earlier. And so, what office character do you think Kelley's Myers-Briggs would most likely align with?
For Kelley, see, I thought you were going to ask me about mine, because I did look it up as we were talking here.
Okay, yours. Okay.
I was quite shocked that I'm Daryl from The Office, and I didn't expect that.
Daryl rocks the keyboard from time to time.
Yeah.
Kelley, I'm gonna go out on a limb. I think maybe David Wallace.
Huh.
I think maybe David Wallace. I see some David-like qualities.
What's the best David Wallace episode for me to rewatch tonight then? The hard one.
Yeah, that is a hard one.
You can follow up with me after.
Yeah. I don't know the best one, but I do think his character is oftentimes this unexpected pinnacle, like within a show. Like it just like he is consistent and oftentimes has a vision and puts up with the nonsense around him. And you've done that in this conversation.
Does he cause the nonsense though? Because I've been known to cause some nonsense.
No, David Wall. No, he's
generally kind of the sense of calm around the craziness.
No, that's not me.
That's in us. So, well, Kelley, we really do. We're so thankful for your time. We really, really are. Yeah.
This is really fun, you guys. Thank you so much.
So if you want to check out other episodes, you can find them on rkdgroup.com. You can find them on all the different platforms where podcasts are available. And so with that, we will see you next time. See you down the road.